every year, thousands upon thousands of people come to Costa Rica and enjoy a vacation that's just unbelievable. But is it possible to move to Costa Rica and live in Costa Rica on a budget? Today we're going to find out what are the facts. What does it actually cost to live in Costa Rica? And is it possible to live on only $1,000 a month? Let's find out.
Welcome to another beautiful day in paradise.
Welcome back. It is another great day in paradise, and today we're going to be talking about the cost of living in Costa Rica. What does it actually cost to live in Costa Rica? And is it possible to live on just $1,000 a month? In other words, is it possible to live on a budget?
We are.
We do. And from our perspective, we don't spend as much as most people, and we've lived all over Costa Rica. But we intentionally spend as little as possible because we're saving up as much as possible so that we can purchase our dream property. So today we're going to give you the actual facts on what we spend on a month-to-month basis and give you an idea on, some people come here, they can spend a whole lot more. And depending on how you want to live, your comfort style, you could spend a whole lot less. So it is possible to live on a budget, but we're going to find out more as we go through. So what's the first thing we're going to talk about?
Groceries.
All right. Everybody's got to eat. And really, depending on your comfort level, your rent or your groceries is going to be the most expensive. For us, it is groceries. We eat really healthy because we're mostly vegan. Not because we don't like meat. I love a good steak. I love milk. However, because of the health benefits, we eat mostly vegan. So normally in the United States, that would probably cost us a whole lot more. However, Costa Rica, you got access to lots of fresh vegetables, fresh fruits. They have lots of farmers markets all over the place. So you can live vegan a whole lot cheaper than if you were in the United States.
Yes, and especially if you want to grow your own food. You can grow food, grow fruits and vegetables 365 days a year. I mean, for the fruits there are seasons, but pretty much all year long you can grow fruits and vegetables.
That's right. The weather is so nice that you can actually farm 365 days out of the year. So that would cut your grocery bill significantly if that's something that you do enjoy doing, right? So depending on your comfort level. Also, it's just us and we spend $500 a month. However, we do have a dog and a cat, and we spoil them a bit. We mix all of their food. We actually buy meat for our dog, mix it all up, and vegetables, meats, rice, and make our own food instead of buying. So that does probably cost a lot more than if we were just to buy cheap dog food, okay?
Right.
Our cat is spoiled, so keep in mind that, we're spending a little more than some on groceries. However, depending on your lifestyle, you might want to spend a whole lot more in groceries.
And if you really like meat, meat tends to be more expensive in comparison, I suppose, to...
Right, meat is very expensive in Costa Rica. So if you like a lot of meat, it is going to cost you a whole lot more, in our opinion.
Also,
Okay?
if you're very particular about your brands, if you like a lot of processed food, things that have to be imported to Costa Rica, those things are probably double the cost that you would pay for them in the United States because they have to be imported.
Right, anything imported in, you're going to have Peter Pan peanut butter, you're going to have Tony the Tiger Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops. Those things are going to cost you a lot because anything imported does cost a whole lot more. They do have similar cereals and peanut butters and things like that, and it's cheaper. However, just something for you to keep in mind. Groceries, anything imported, will cost you more.
Right. We've adapted pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, we're eating very healthy and enjoying. We definitely don't skip on our meals. We like how we cook and how we eat. So we eat some pretty darn good meals.
Yes.
So groceries probably our most expensive one. That's $500 a month. But the next thing is going to be your housing.
There's a big variety of cost in housing. Anywhere from, I don't know, the least expensive we've lived was for, I think, $120 a month.
Right, so our cheapest was $120 a month. That was a place in Sabalito, right? And our most expensive was in a place in Los Juntos when we first came here. However, keep in mind that was $500 a month, but it was expensive because it was furnished. So that's always a great thing to keep in mind when you first come over. You want to find a place that's furnished, it will cost you more. But after being here for a while, what is really neat, you get to meet people, get inside the community. You're going to find places that you can rent that's not on websites or anything. But, you know, I've known people that will rent their house for under $100, you know, and you really will get the Costa Rican culture, because for something like that, you're going to be living in a family environment where, you know, there's houses right next to you, so close that you can actually hear them snoring next to you in some places. So you can find some deals. However, depending on your comfort level, you can easily spend $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month, depending on where you want to live. However, if you're on a budget, you most definitely, the house we're living in right now, it's $200 a month, and that includes electricity and water. But keep in mind, if you find a place and it says includes utilities, electricity and water, well, that's probably because it's in a family environment. That house, if it includes electricity, it's normally because 2 or 3 houses are connected on the same meter, and instead of them running another meter and paying for that extra expense, well, they just ran wires to the other house, and all those houses are on one meter, and they share that expense. Right. So that's something for you to keep in mind. If you see something like that, know that you're about to live in a family environment where the whole family's living right there in very close proximity.
Right, and the houses that we've lived in that were not expensive, they did not come furnished at all. In fact, it sounds strange, but we've had to put the kitchen sink in to 2 different homes that we've lived in. You know, before we could rent these lower priced homes, we had to buy a refrigerator, we had to buy a stove, all of the bedding, all of, you know, everything that goes into that house. You're going to pay more naturally for a furnished apartment or a furnished house. Also, depending on what area you live in. If you're going to live down near the coast, near the beach, in the more touristy areas, the rent is more expensive there. Where we're living now, we're up in the mountains, and we're in just a little family community. So we're telling you this because to let you know that once you're here, you can find places for a lot cheaper rent than what you might find on the internet, you know, places that aren't advertised.
That's right. Now, and we live in what people would classify a typical Tico house, okay? You can live in American standard houses, but those are going to cost you a whole lot more. Like Rebecca said, whenever you're renting a typical Tico house, you're renting pretty much 4 walls and a roof. That's what I like to call it. Obviously, you have bedrooms and all that, but most of the time, a typical Tico house, it has 2 bedrooms, a bathroom right in the middle. It's usually only 1 bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. Okay, so they're typically small, but when you rent it, you're not, most of the time, there's nothing in it. When they move out, they move everything out, including the kitchen sink, many times. So keep that in mind. However, once you've been here for a little while, you know, to install a little kitchen sink and a little base, all those things, you can really turn one of those into a wonderful place and live very modestly, very cheap in Costa Rica. So, like we said before, we really enjoy where we're living at right now. And yes, I had to put in the kitchen sink. I had to put in the shower. I had to put in everything there. I had to put in shelves in the kitchen. However, we really love where we're at right now. It's one of the better places we lived at, and it only cost us $200.
Right. So, and you don't have things like air conditioning. However, you don't really need that, which brings us, I think, to our next topic of electricity.
But before we get into electricity, keep in mind, because that's a good topic to bring up, we're in housing, and so most of the houses, depending on where you're at, not going to have air conditioning. So like she said, where they don't have a refrigerator or freezers or dishwashers or anything like that, washing machines, they're not going to have air conditioning. But most places in Costa Rica, the temperature is so nice you don't need it. Now, however, there will be a few places along the coast, by the beaches, that might actually have air conditioning units in there, but keep in mind, you're going to spend more.
Right.
But like Rebecca says, brings us to our next topic, which is,
Electricity, the utilities.
and we normally spend about how much on electricity?
Around $75.
About 75 bucks, of course, depending on where you're at and how much you use it. Keep in mind, electricity is tiered. So a lot of Costa Ricans, they never even meet the minimum electrical monthly price
Right.
because they mostly just lights and TV, don't use a whole lot. We use more than most, and that's because of our computers, our monitors,
We have an electric hot water system.
right? We have the electric shower system, typically called the suicide shower in Costa Rica by the gringos. We'll talk more about that in another video, but we do have a freezer, a refrigerator. So we do have a little more stuff than
We have a
most
microwave.
people. Microwave. We have a lot of stuff that most typical Costa Rican families wouldn't have. However, we don't use a dryer. So we don't have a clothes dryer.
And the
We don't
first-
have a dishwasher.
The first house we lived in when we got here that was furnished, it had a washer and dryer combo, and we were shocked at how high the electric bill is, because once you get over that usage tier, you know, whatever the usage rate is, then it gets more expensive. It increases.
Right. If you're going to use a
Per
dryer,
kilowatt of
that's right, because
usage, the
it's
price.
tiered, and in the United States, where the more you use, the cheaper it is. Well, it's the opposite in Costa Rica. You know, if you don't hit the minimum, it's very cheap, but the more you use, the more expensive it gets. So if you're going to use a dryer, if you're going to use a lot of electricity, it will cost you a whole lot more. So do keep that in mind. Most people in Costa Rica just hang their clothes out on the line.
Yeah, and I do. I prefer that.
Yeah, and of course it smells fresh. So it's just, in Costa Rica, it's the Pura Vida lifestyle.
Yeah.
Hang the clothes on the line.
Although I do know people who just like to have a dryer for during rainy season.
That's
Because
right.
It is during rainy season. It is hard to get your sheets and
And keep-
towels and things dried on.
Right. Keep in mind that once you get here, you can buy a dryer that operates on gas, on propane. And so it's not going to cost you nearly as much. So that's an alternative as well.
Right, which brings us to our next utility, which is propane. Most people use that to cook on. You can use it for your hot water shower. You could use it for a dryer. So, but most people use propane for cooking, and that's what we use to cook.
Right, most of the time. And of course, you know, depending on how much you cook, for us, one propane bottle, a 5-gallon propane bottle or 20-pound bottle, whatever you call it, would last us typically about 3 months. So depending on how much you cook, I'm amazed at how long one propane bottle will last.
Yes.
And we actually, we cook a good bit, and we boil a whole lot because I like to make my own wine. It's just one of the hobbies I have. And so I'll end up boiling a lot of bottles and stuff. So I think we use a fair amount of propane, and it does still last a very long time. So to get that bottle refilled, well, geez, it's only about 12 or 15 bucks. So on average, we're only spending about $5 a month on propane. So keep in mind, propane is very cheap.
Right. And so is the water.
Water is cheap, and a lot of places, depending on where you rent, water is free because, like the house we're in now, they get water from one of the creeks nearby. Water in Costa Rica is cleaner than just about any place I've ever been to.
It's so wonderful.
It's amazing how clean. Matter of fact, we were in Las Vegas before we came here, and you know, there's not a lot of water in Las Vegas. I have bought this very, very expensive filtering system, and we've cleaned all of our water. And of course, you gauge it and you measure it. Well, I had brought that to Costa Rica not knowing how clean it was, and the water from Costa Rica was cleaner than the water once it came out of that machine. So that tells you how clean and how fresh the water is in Costa Rica.
It's wonderful.
But how much is our water bill every month?
About $15 a month on the high end when we've had to
That's right.
pay for water.
So when we do pay for water on the high end, $15 a month, that's expensive. So water is cheap. Now that brings us to
The internet.
internet. Now, depending on your lifestyle, for us, you know,
Necessity.
it's a necessity. You know, we do all of our business online, and that's how we sustain ourselves here. So we have to have good, reliable internet. So depending on where you're at, we like to live in the rural areas, and in the rural areas, you're not going to find the best internet in the world. So you have to do some
It's
extreme
not,
things.
It's not available.
Yeah, it's just not available. However, if you live more in the touristy areas, yes, you can get better internet over there. So depending on where you're at, and if you live closer to town, you can get better internet. So
And if you don't need a lot of internet, you could use the data plan on your cell phone, even in rural areas.
that's right. So
But we require more
for our business, we have to have more dependable. So if you don't need much internet and you're just going to use it to email, hey, you can use the internet that's on your data plan on your cell phone. And that would work just great.
And how much is that? Because you have a data plan.
Yeah, see, well, that's going to bring us right into the phone. But before we go into that, as far as the internet goes, we spend on average about $75 a month. It could be cheaper depending on where you're at. There's a company called Cabletica or Cabletica. You can get really fast internet for about $50. However, keep in mind, internet is getting better and better and better. They're now installing fiber optic. That will take some time. However, internet is getting better. So depending on when you come, we've seen huge improvements on that front, right? So, which brings us back to the question she said, you can use your data plan. And my phone plan, data plan is only about $35 a month for my phone, which includes my data. So you can get by really cheap on that. So if you bring your phone from home, you can buy a SIMS card, and it's a rechargeable SIMS card, and that's what Rebecca uses.
Yes, I put about $10 on my phone, and I just, when I run out, I put $10 more.
And
There's no limit. You can put.
Yeah, you can put as much on there as you want. You can put $2 on there. And it lasts a very long time, depending on how much you call. So having a phone in Costa Rica, and you can buy the little cheap phones there. You can buy phones here, and then you can just put a SIMS card on there and just recharge it all the time. Or you can do like I do, and you can get a phone plan. Of course, that's a whole nother topic, because then you either have to know somebody, be a resident, have a corporation. There's things you have to do before you can actually get a phone plan in Costa Rica.
So if you don't have those requirements, then you can just buy a prepaid.
You can buy a prepaid plan, and they work the same way as a phone plan, and the cost is pretty much the same.
Right.
Okay. So the phone plan is going to be pretty cheap, about $35 a month, which then brings us to transportation.
So depending on what mode of transportation you choose, if you're going to have your own vehicle, of course that's going to depend on how much traveling you have to do. If you live out in the middle of nowhere and have to travel quite a long ways into town, or if you live right in town. So it's hard to gauge. The gas prices here, gas and diesel prices here are a lot higher.
Yeah, for fuel, it's going to be a whole lot more. On average, well, we spend about $75 a month for gasoline, okay? So keep in mind, if you use the public transportation, you're not going to spend near as much, okay? And if you live close to town, you can walk, you can bike, you can get an Uber, you can get a taxi, and you're not going to spend nearly as much.
And of course, the price of gas changes. About how much is a liter right now?
I can't remember how much a liter is, but typically it's going to run you around $4 to $5 a gallon. It's sold by the liter here, and the government controls the prices, so it's not like the United States where you're looking for whoever sells the cheapest gas. It doesn't matter where you stop at. So that's one of the things that you want to think about, and things that you can look into. So your gasoline, just depending on whether you have your own transportation or public transportation, it's not going to be a whole lot, depending on how much you travel.
Right. And of course, if you own your own vehicle, you want to consider annual expenses that are associated with owning a vehicle, which is your annual insurance and tax. It has to be.
That's right. So you want to probably take a look at the link in the video here that talks about owning a vehicle in Costa Rica. Watch that video so that you have more details about those costs.
Exactly. There's your TIVI, your annual inspection, and then there's also to consider, if you're on a very tight budget, the cost of maintenance on your vehicle.
That's right, because the roads here are pretty hard on it, and so those are something that you want to put into your budget, making sure that you have a budget for your taxes, your inspection, and your maintenance on your vehicle. But as far as transportation, about $75 a month, which brings us to entertainment, which is dining out, which is what we're doing right now. And dining out, depending on where you're going, could be rather expensive in the touristy areas. Or if you enjoy really the Costa Rican cuisine or enjoy the Costa Rican culture, you can eat very affordable.
Right. And we have a really good video that goes into detail about those things.
So go to the link right there and you can see the video all about food in Costa Rica and learn more about that. But typically, if we go out once a week and we enjoy a meal, it's going to cost us about what?
Between $30 and $40, depending on if you have cervezas or if you
Depending
have
on whether
wine.
you have a glass of wine or you have a beer,
If we get dessert or not, of course, it's just like anywhere.
That's right. So like anywhere, but it's not expensive, and we find that dining out, because we go to some of the local restaurants, is cheaper than if we were in the United States.
Right. And if we simply get a meal and maybe just one glass of wine, then we can eat as little as $20.
That's right. So it can be very affordable. But that's entertainment as far as dining out. So we spend probably $150 a month dining out. Of course, you may want to go do some tours or sightseeing and waterfalls and things like that. So of course that's going to increase your entertainment budget, but you can do a lot of stuff right here in Costa Rica that is absolutely free. So entertainment wise, you can save a lot of money because there's just tons of things you can do by yourself. There's just not a lot of, I guess for lack of a better word, I can only call it not a lot of social entertainment, other than there's a lot of bars, places where people dance at. The dancing is amazing here because it's not like what you would see in the United States where anything is a dance. Here they've got some pretty amazing and wonderful dances, places where you can learn to dance. And so it's really fun to actually watch that and go to those places. So if you enjoy the bar scene, you enjoy dances, that's great. They do have a couple of cinemas in larger towns. San Jose has cinemas. San Isidro has a cinema, but you're not going to see a lot of that anywhere else. So there's not a lot of public or social entertainment, but there's tons of wildlife entertainment, nature entertainment, that kind of thing. So that's all that I can think about as far as entertainment. So your entertainment is going to just be depending on you on how much you want to go out and do, but ours is fairly cheap, about $150 a month.
Yeah, we like to just get on the motorbike and go ride and look for places to see, new places to see.
Right, we'll get on the motorbike and we'll just go up and down roads that we've never been, and it'll be amazing because we'll find a waterfall that seems like nobody knows about, because you don't see them. Yeah, we go all off the beaten path and we just really have a great time. So that's entertainment, which brings us to the next topic, which is
Insurance.
Insurance. Now, obviously, we really can't tell you much about insurance. I'm a veteran, so I don't need insurance. We did have insurance. You got to find out from your own insurance agent as far as what's covered and what's not covered, and if you're covered by going out to another country. However, Rebecca did some research and found out, obviously, when you come here, you have something done, you're going to pay for it, and then your insurance company might reimburse you. Obviously, that depends on your insurance company.
Right.
But as far as that goes, the reason you're having insurance is for medical expenses, which we've both had medical procedures done. Nothing serious, and found that the medical procedures were crazy cheap for what
Compared to the United States.
right.
So you had a root canal. I had a little minor surgery where a little lesion was removed. Less than $500.
Right. So it's amazing how cheap you can get medical procedures done in Costa Rica. Dental work. I've had a lot of dental work, and it's way cheaper than it is in the United States. Matter of fact, it's kind of hard to compare because I don't know the prices. But for example, I just recently had braces, and braces are really cheap. I know that I had braces for my daughter years ago, and I think I spent well over $2,000 for those braces. And in Costa Rica, I only have to pay 75,000 colones for 3 months. And so 75,000 colones translates to about $150. Okay, so I'd pay $150 for 3 months, and then I would pay 20,000 colones a month every month until the braces come off. And so depending on how old you are, it might take a year and a half to 2 years, but that's only about $40 a month. So it makes it very cheap to be able to get braces or get dental work done So your medical and dental really is going to be a lot cheaper than anything you can imagine as far as the United States goes.
And as far as I know, a lot of retirees have their Medicare, and I don't know how they work that out, but there are tons of retirees here.
Right, there's a lot of people who choose to come here, which brings us to our next topic. If you're thinking about coming to Costa Rica, we've just talked about all our budgets, and I will go through there section by section, add it all up so that you can see the total cost. But really, we easily and comfortably live on about $1,300 a month every single month. We don't do anything super extravagant. However, we really enjoy what we're doing, and you can easily live a little cheaper, but you can easily live a whole lot more expensive. But that brings up, if you're coming, you have to be financially self-sustaining, because it's almost impossible for you to legally work in Costa Rica as a foreigner. Even when you become a resident, it's still very difficult for you to actually legally work in Costa Rica. So that means you need to do something like us, which means that you've learned how to work online, or you are a retiree and you're drawing a check, or maybe you're one of the lucky few that you just have more money than you need, and that's not a problem for you. And so that's good for you. So those are some things that you do need to keep in mind. So that brings us to, Rebecca, is it possible to live on $1,000 a month in Costa Rica?
I think so.
It is possible. Matter of fact, if you've been saving your money and you have a little nest egg, right now especially, we've seen some phenomenal prices on houses and real estate. Everything is really dropping. So you'll be amazed at what you can buy for $150,000, $200,000. I'm talking about some super fine places. And once you pay for that, of course, if you come, you've saved up your nest egg, you've paid cash, and then you don't have that monthly expense, and so you could easily live on $1,000 a month.
Right. You could live in a nice area and live comfortably.
That's right. So keep in mind, even if you don't have a nest egg, once you get here and you make friends and you find places where you can actually live in a community where you're renting for $100 a month, and if you don't eat a whole lot or you grow your own, yes, you can live for $1,000 a month, and you're not living in some unsafe neighborhood like you might, depending if you were living in the United States or some other part of the world. So yes, I believe you could easily live on $1,000 a month, just depending on your comfort level.
Right. For example, if we gave up going out to eat we go out to eat about twice a week, twice a week. We have our dog and our cat. If we didn't have those pets, then
we'd save a good bit of money
there.
there.
We could live on $1,000 a month.
So we could easily live on $1,000 a month, but we're enjoying life. So I guess bottom line, you could comfortably live on $2,000 a month, very, very easy.
Without having to pinch pennies.
Without having to pinch pennies. And I believe you could probably live on $1,500 a month, not having to pinch pennies very much. So really it just depends on your comfort level, whether you need a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, a great big house, air conditioning, dryer, all those things do affect, but that gives you an idea. So let me take a quick look.
We should mention that we're living in a tiny 2-bedroom, 1-bath house.
Right, we do live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Obviously, we don't need a whole lot of room, right?
The prices go up in rent, for each additional bedroom and, of course, each additional bathroom.
So indeed, it is possible, and you could actually come down here and really just enjoy Costa Rica, which I guess brings us to our next topic. What are we talking about next week, Rebecca?
Did you tell me?
Well, let's take a look at my notes right here. My notes say that we're going to be talking about
the best places to live in Costa Rica.
Well, since you now know what it costs to live in Costa Rica, what are the best places to live? What are the best towns to live? And I guess depending on when you first get here, whether you got to stamp out month to month, we're going to talk about all of that stuff next week. So remember to tune in every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we premiere live. And hey, you can ask questions, and we're there waiting on the other side to answer your questions just as quickly as they come in. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take a moment to subscribe, like the video, and once again, we'll see you next week.